I'm Dr. Bertice Berry, and I want to tell you a story. I was recently asked to speak to the topic of provoking the spirit of justice. Yeah, I had to immediately say, we talk about the power of justice, but we try not to provoke those spirits in my house. Most people don't realize that the Middle Passage is called the Middle Passage because there was a first, middle, and final passage. The first passage was the tragic journey of millions of Africans from the inlands to walk to the coast to those slave ships, where when they were there, they were told that if you ever see the ocean, drop your heart because you'll never be back home. The Middle Passage was that tragic voyage across from Africa to the Americas, where many died. Many died on the first passage, many died on the middle passage. The third, final passage was walking from wherever you ported, say Charleston, to wherever you were enslaved. If you were enslaved in Alabama, most likely you walked from Charleston to Alabama. Millions and millions of souls made their transition on the first, middle, and final passage. The last time somebody called on those angels from Africa, we see what happens. You don't want to provoke those. But to speak to justice, um, most people love to talk about Dr. King when we talk about justice and his famous quote, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, which he wrote in that letter from a Birmingham jail without notes or references. He said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." We don't hear about the quote that he wrote when he was around 17 or 18 years old, Morehouse College, in a paper he wrote called The Purpose of Education, where he said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." This is where we get without justice, there can be no peace. So, peace is not just the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. In my faith tradition, we take an oath at our baptism, and we're asked the question, will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? And our answer is, I will, with God's help. And as our rector Michael often points out, there's a comma after that I will. And that comma is a sigh. I will, with God's help. It's not easy to strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being. It's not easy. It's not easy when some of us are treated with all the indignity that can be mustered. And too many people don't comprehend this. And I think last night we were able to witness what many of us have been saying all along, that the treatment for my nephews walking across the street to McDonald's when they're handcuffed, thrown in a car, 3 cars called, is very, very different from anybody else's child just walking across the street. And what's even more difficult for me to deal with are people who know me saying things like, what time was it? What were they doing? Well, do they have a record? Where were they going? Why would you ask that? You ask it because you really have bought the narrative that people who are the descendants of those who survived the first, middle, and final passage are somehow the animals, that we are somehow the ones who are causing the looting and the rioting and the destruction of America. We're the ones who are stealing, and you've looked so closely at us that you can't see the problem that truly exists. Dr. King's mentor, Howard Thurman, the mystic and theologian, said there is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else is pulling. We say Black Lives Matter not to say that white lives don't matter. And every time we hear that refrain, all lives matter, it is a way of saying, I don't want to deal with that right now. I can't see that right now. I need to be in every story. I'm used to being the princess, even in your narrative. Black Lives Matter because until there's justice for everybody, there'll be no peace for anybody. It really is that. Until that man that my mother would go and get money orders for to send to in prison knew that somebody loved him, we won't be right. We take these drives on Christmas Eve morning, early in the morning, 5-hour drive to a prison so that my mother in her 80s could sit with these people who we didn't know why they were there. She said, because everybody should know a mother's love. The same woman who abused me when I was a child had the ability to transform to be what she was called to be. We all do. If you will listen to the sound of the genuine. My mother, in her alcoholic, abusive state, became the most precious being on this earth because she heard the sound of the genuine calling her back to herself. Take the day to listen, to hear it, to understand that when you know yourself, you won't have time to hate anybody else. I love you.